The wind howled through the Appalachian pines, sharp and cold, as if it knew the secrets we carried. Lila stood frozen at the edge of the campsite, her heart pounding louder than the rustling leaves, watching Jerry's silhouette against the flickering campfire. She wasn't supposed to feel this way, not about her stepdaughter, not ever. Lila had always been the steady one, the anchor in a family stitched together by loss and second chances. At 38, she built a life in Asheville, North Carolina, with her husband Tom and his daughter Jerry, after Tom's first wife passed away when Jerry was just a teenager. Lila had been the one to braid Jerry's hair for prom, to cheer at her soccer games, to hold her when nightmares woke her in the dead of night. She was a mother, or as close to one as she could be, but the way her pulse quickened when Jerry laughed, or the way her eyes lingered too long on Jerry's sharp jawline, was anything but maternal. Jerry, now 22, was a wildfire, bold, untamed, and impossible to ignore. She'd grown into a woman who wore her defiance like armor, her green eyes flashing with a mix of rebellion and vulnerability. She'd come out as a lesbian at 17, and while Tom had struggled to understand, Lila had been her fiercest ally, marching beside her at Pride, helping her navigate heartbreak. But somewhere along the way, Lila's pride in Jerry had twisted into something deeper, something forbidden. She buried it, of course, shoved it down beneath layers of duty and guilt, but it clawed its way back every time Jerry's hand brushed hers. This hiking trip was supposed to be a reset. Tom had suggested it, a family adventure to reconnect before Jerry moved to Seattle for a new job. But when Tom's work called him back to Asheville at the last minute, it left Lila and Jerry alone, trekking through the rugged trails of the Blue Ridge Mountains. Just the two of them, a tent, and the weight of unspoken truths. The first day was easy enough. They hiked in companionable silence, the crunch of leaves underfoot, and the distant call of a hawk filling the space between them. Jerry led the way, her long strides confident, her backpack bouncing lightly. Lila followed, stealing glances at the way Jerry's flannel shirt clung to her shoulders, the way her short black hair caught the sunlight. "You're staring again," Jerry teased, glancing back with a smirk that made Lila's stomach flip. "I'm not," Lila shot back, her voice too quick, her cheeks burning despite the autumn chill. Jerry laughed, a sound that echoed through the trees, and Lila wondered how something so innocent could feel so dangerous. By dusk they reached their campsite, a small clearing nestled in a valley. Lila busied herself setting up the tent, her hands moving mechanically to avoid meeting Jerry's gaze. But Jerry was relentless, crouching beside her, their shoulders brushing as they hammered stakes into the earth. "You're quiet tonight," Jerry said, her voice softer now, searching. "Everything okay?" Lila nodded, not trusting her voice. The tent was small, too small, she realized, as the reality of sharing it sank in. She'd packed it thinking Tom would be there, that the three of them would make it work. Now it was just her and Jerry, inches apart in the dark. They cooked dinner over the campfire, the flames casting shadows that danced across Jerry's face. Lila tried to focus on the food, beans and rice, simple and safe, but her eyes kept drifting to Jerry's hands, strong and callous from years of climbing and soccer. "You're gonna burn those beans if you keep zoning out," Jerry said, her tone playful but her eyes sharp, like she could see right through Lila's carefully constructed walls. "Sorry," Lila muttered, stirring the pot with more force than necessary. "Just tired." Jerry tilted her head, studying her. "You sure? You've been weird all day. Like you're avoiding me." Lila's heart lurched. "I'm not avoiding you," she said, too quickly. "I don't know. It's been a long week." Jerry didn't push, but the silence that followed was heavy, charged with something neither of them dared name. After dinner they sat by the fire, the crackling was the only sound for a while. Lila stared into the flames, willing her thoughts to stay pure, but Jerry's presence was a magnet, pulling her closer with every breath. "Remember when we went to that Pride parade?" Jerry said suddenly, her voice soft but deliberate. "You held my hand the whole time. I was so scared, but you made me feel safe." Lila's throat tightened. She remembered that day vividly, the rainbow flags, the music, the way Jerry's hand had trembled in hers. "You were so brave," she said quietly. "You still are." Jerry's eyes met hers, and for a moment the world stopped. There was something raw in Jerry's gaze, something that mirrored the ache in Lila's chest. "You're the brave one," Jerry whispered. "You always have been." The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Lila wanted to look away to break the spell, but she couldn't. The firelight flickered in Jerry's eyes, and Lila felt the pull, the dangerous gravity of it all. She stood abruptly, brushing dirt from her jeans. "We should get some sleep," she said, her voice strained. "Big day tomorrow." Jerry nodded, but the look in her eyes said she wasn't fooled. They climbed into the tent, the space so small their sleeping bags nearly touched. Lila lay on her back, staring at the canvas ceiling, her heart racing as Jerry's breathing slowed beside her. She could feel the heat of Jerry's body, even through the layers of fabric, and it took everything in her to stay still, to not reach out, to not ruin everything. But as the night deepened and the forest quieted, Lila knew this trip was about to change everything. The line between right and wrong, between mother and lover, was blurring, and she wasn't sure she could stop it, or if she even wanted to. The morning sun filtered through the tent, casting a soft glow over Jerry's sleeping face. Lila woke first, her body stiff from the cold ground, her mind heavy with the weight of last night's unspoken tension. She slipped out quietly, desperate for air, for distance, for anything to quiet the storm in her chest. Outside, the valley was a painting of mist and golden light, but Lila barely noticed. She busied herself with the fire, coaxing it back to life, trying to drown out the memory of Jerry's breath so close in the dark. She was supposed to be the responsible one, the one who held everything together. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw Jerry's face, felt the electric pull of her presence. Jerry emerged from the tent, stretching with a yawn that made her look younger, softer. "Morning," she said, her voice rough with sleep. "You're up early." "Couldn't sleep," Lila admitted, keeping her eyes on the fire. "Thought I'd get breakfast going." Jerry sat across from her, cross-legged, her flannel shirt rumpled and her hair a mess of dark waves. "You're still acting weird," she said bluntly. "What's going on, Lila?" Lila's hands froze on the coffee pot. "Nothing's going on," she lied, her voice tight. "Just not used to camping without Tom, I guess." Jerry's eyes narrowed, but she didn't push. They ate in silence, the clink of spoons against tin plates loud in the morning air. Lila felt Jerry's gaze on her, searching, but she kept her own eyes down, afraid of what they might betray. The day's hike was grueling, the trail climbing steeply through dense forest. Jerry led again, her pace relentless, as if she was running from something too. Lila followed, her legs burning, her mind a tangle of guilt and desire. She told herself it was the altitude, the thin air making her dizzy, but she knew better. It was Jerry, always Jerry. They stopped at a lookout point, a rocky outcrop with a view of rolling hills stretching to the horizon. Jerry dropped her pack and leaned against a boulder, her chest heaving from the climb. "This place is unreal," she said, her voice awed. "Makes you feel small, doesn't it?" Lila nodded, joining her at the edge. The wind whipped through her hair, and for a moment, she let herself imagine a world where this was simple, where she and Jerry were just two people, free to feel whatever they felt. But the weight of reality crashed back. She was married, Jerry was her stepdaughter, and this was a line she couldn't cross. "You ever think about leaving?" Jerry asked suddenly, her eyes fixed on the horizon. "Like just starting over somewhere new?" Lila's breath caught. "Sometimes," she admitted. "But I've got responsibilities. Tom, the house, it's not that simple." Jerry turned to her, her expression unreadable. "What if it was? What if you could just be who you are?" The question hit like a punch. Lila had spent years burying that part of herself, the part that had loved women before Tom, the part that still stirred when Jerry smiled. She'd told herself it was a phase, a past life, but Jerry's words cracked that lie wide open. "I don't know who that is anymore," Lila said quietly, her voice breaking. Jerry stepped closer, so close Lila could smell the pine and sweat on her skin. "I think you do," she said softly. "I think you're just scared." Lila's heart pounded so loud she was sure Jerry could hear it. She wanted to step back, to run, but her feet were rooted to the ground. Jerry's hand brushed hers, a fleeting touch that sent a jolt through her entire body. For a moment they stood there, the world falling away, nothing but the wind and the heat of their skin. Then Jerry pulled back, her face flushed. "We should keep moving," she said, her voice rough. She grabbed her pack and started down the trail, leaving Lila to follow, her mind reeling. That night, the tension was unbearable. They set up camp in a secluded grove, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and pine. Lila tried to focus on routine, pitching the tent, cooking dinner, but every glance at Jerry felt like a betrayal. Jerry was quieter too, her usual teasing replaced by a heavy silence. After dinner they sat by the fire again, the flames casting long shadows. Lila's hands twisted in her lap, her mind racing for something to say, anything to break the silence. But it was Jerry who spoke first. "Do you ever feel like you're living someone else's life?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Like you're playing a part but it's not you?" Lila's chest tightened. She knew exactly what Jerry meant, but admitting it felt like stepping off a cliff. "All the time," she said finally, her voice raw. "But I don't know how to stop." Jerry's eyes met hers and there it was again, that raw, aching connection. "Maybe you don't have to stop," Jerry said. "Maybe you just have to choose." The word hung between them, heavy with possibility. Lila's breath hitched and for a moment she let herself imagine it. Choosing Jerry, choosing herself. But the weight of guilt, of duty was too much. She stood abruptly, brushing off her jeans. "We need to sleep," she said, her voice shaking. "We've got a long day tomorrow." Jerry didn't argue, but the look in her eyes said she wasn't giving up. They climbed into the tent, the space even smaller in Lila's mind, the air thick with everything they weren't saying. As she lay there, listening to Jerry's steady breathing, Lila knew she was fighting a losing battle. The pull was too strong, the truth too loud, and deep down she wasn't sure she wanted to win. The third day dawned gray and heavy, the sky threatening rain. Lila woke to the sound of Jerry packing up, her movements quick and purposeful. There was a distance in her eyes now, a guardedness that hadn't been there before, and it cut Lila deeper than she expected. They hiked in near silence, the trail slick with mud from an overnight drizzle. Lila's boots sank into the earth, each step a reminder of the weight she carried. She wanted to say something to bridge the gap that had opened between them, but every word felt like a minefield. Jerry stayed ahead, her pace relentless, as if she could outrun the tension that hung between them. By midday, they reached a narrow ridge, the trail flanked by a steep drop on one side and a dense forest on the other. The wind was sharper here, cutting through Lila's jacket, and she shivered as she watched Jerry pause to take in the view. "You okay up there?" Lila called, her voice echoing off the rocks. Jerry glanced back, her expression softening for a moment. "Yeah," she said. "Just thinking." Lila caught up, her breath visible in the cold air. "About what?" Jerry hesitated, her eyes searching Lila's face. "About how easy it is to get lost out here," she said finally, "and how hard it is to find your way back." The words felt like a confession, and Lila's heart ached with the truth of them. She wanted to reach out to pull Jerry close, but the chasm between them felt too wide. Instead she nodded, her throat tight. "We'll find our way," she said, though she wasn't sure she believed it. The rain started as they set up camp, a steady drizzle that soaked through their clothes. They worked quickly, pitching the tent under a canopy of pines, but by the time they were done, they were both drenched and shivering. Inside the tent, they stripped off their wet jackets, the space feeling smaller than ever as they sat knee to knee, wrapped in blankets. "You're shaking," Jerry said, her voice soft with concern. She reached out, her hand hovering over Lila's arm before pulling back. "We need to get warm." Lila nodded, her teeth chattering. They shared the last of their dry clothes, huddling close under the blankets. The rain pattered against the tent, a steady rhythm that matched the pounding of Lila's heart. Jerry's warmth was intoxicating, her breath a soft cadence in the dim light. "I'm sorry if I pushed you," Jerry said suddenly, her voice barely audible over the rain. I see you, Lila. I see how you hold everything in. How you're always trying to be perfect for everyone else. It kills me." Lila's breath caught. She wanted to deny it, to say she was fine, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she looked at Jerry, really looked at her, and saw the same longing, the same fear mirrored in her eyes. "You don't have to be sorry," Lila whispered. I'm the one who's messed up." Jerry shook her head, her eyes fierce. "You're not messed up. You're human. And you're allowed to want things, Lila. You're allowed to want me." The air between them crackled, the words laying bare everything they'd been dancing around. Lila's heart screamed to close the distance, to give in, but the weight of her wedding ring, of her promises, held her back. Jerry, we can't, she said, her voice breaking. You know why. Jerry's jaw tightened, but she didn't look away. I know, she said. But that doesn't make it hurt any less. They sat there, the rain falling harder now, the silence heavy with everything they couldn't say. Lila wanted to cry, to scream, to run, but all she could do was sit there, inches from the person she wanted more than anything, knowing she could never have her. That night they lay side by side, the space between them a chasm and a lifeline all at once. Lila listened to the rain, to Jerry's breathing, and wondered how much longer she could keep fighting. The truth was clawing its way out, and she wasn't sure she could stop it, or if she even wanted to. The rain didn't let up, turning the trail into a muddy gauntlet. Lila and Jerry packed up in silence, their movements mechanical, as if they could outrun the weight of last night's conversation. But the air between them was different now, charged, fragile, like a glass about to shatter. They hiked through the morning, the forest dense and quiet except for the drip of water from the trees. Lila's mind was a storm, replaying Jerry's words, her own confession, the way their hands had almost touched. She felt like she was unraveling, every step pulling her closer to a truth she wasn't ready to face. By afternoon they reached a river swollen from the rain, its current fast and unforgiving. The trail required them to cross, but the bridge, a rickety wooden thing, looked like it hadn't been maintained in years. Lila hesitated, her eyes scanning the churning water. This doesn't look safe, she said, her voice tight. Jerry, ever fearless, stepped onto the bridge, testing its strength. It'll hold, she said, her tone more confident than Lila felt. Come on, we've got this. Lila followed, her heart in her throat as the bridge creaked under their weight. They were halfway across when a board snapped beneath Jerry's foot, sending her lurching forward. Lila lunged, grabbing Jerry's arm, pulling her back just as the bridge swayed dangerously. Jesus, Jerry gasped, her eyes wide as she clung to Lila. Their faces were inches apart, their breaths mingling in the damp air. For a moment time stopped, the world narrowing to the feel of Jerry's arm under her hand, the wild beat of her own heart. You okay? Lila asked, her voice shaking. Jerry nodded, but she didn't pull away. Thanks to you, she said, her voice soft, her eyes locked on Lila's. They stood there, the river roaring below, the bridge groaning under them. Lila's hand lingered on Jerry's arm, her thumb brushing against the soft flannel, and she felt the pull again, that dangerous, intoxicating pull. She let go abruptly, stepping back, her face burning. We need to keep moving, she said, her voice hoarse. Jerry's expression flickered, hurt then resolve, but she nodded and they crossed the rest of the bridge in silence. On the other side, they collapsed onto the bank, catching their breath. Lila's hands trembled, not just from the adrenaline, but from the nearness of Jerry, the way her body had felt so right against her own. That night, they camped by the river, the sound of the water a constant reminder of how close they'd come to disaster. Lila built the fire, her movements jerky, as if she could burn away the tension. Jerry watched her, her eyes unreadable, and Lila felt the weight of her gaze like a physical touch. You saved me today, Jerry said finally, her voice low. You didn't even think about it. You just acted. Lila shrugged, poking at the fire. Anyone would have done it. No, Jerry said firmly. Not anyone. You. Lila's throat tightened. She wanted to argue, to push Jerry away. But the truth was too loud now, too undeniable. She loved Jerry. Not as a stepdaughter, not as a friend, but as something more, something that terrified her and set her free all at once. Jerry, she started, her voice breaking. This can't happen. You know that. Jerry's eyes flashed, a mix of anger and pain. Why? Because of what people will think? Because of Tom? Or because you're scared of what it means? All of it, Lila admitted, her voice raw. I'm married, Jerry. You're my stepdaughter. This isn't, it's not right. Jerry stood, closing the distance between them, her face fierce. What's not right is you pretending you don't feel this. I see it, Lila. Feel it. And I know you do too. Lila's breath hitched, her body trembling as Jerry's words cut through her defenses. She wanted to deny it, to run, but Jerry was so close, her eyes burning with a truth Lila couldn't escape. And then, before she could stop herself, Lila reached out, her hand cupping Jerry's face, her thumb brushing against her cheek. For a moment they were still, the world holding its breath. Then Jerry leaned in, her lips brushing Lila's, soft and tentative, a question and a promise. Lila froze, her heart screaming to pull away. But her body betrayed her, leaning into the kiss, into Jerry, into everything she'd been fighting. It was over in a heartbeat, but it changed everything. Lila pulled back, her eyes wide, her breath ragged. "We can't," she whispered. But the words felt hollow now, meaningless against the truth of what they'd just done. Jerry's eyes were wet, but she didn't look away. "I'm not sorry," she said, her voice fierce. "And I don't think you are either." Lila didn't answer. She couldn't. The fire crackled between them, the river roared, and Lila knew there was no going back. The final day of the hike was a blur of guilt and longing. Lila woke before dawn, her body aching from the cold and the weight of what had happened. The kiss lingered like a bruise, tender and impossible to ignore. She packed up the tent in silence, avoiding Jerry's gaze, afraid of what she'd see there. Jerry was quieter too, her usual fire dimmed by the reality of what they'd done. They hiked back toward the trailhead, the forest giving way to open fields, the world feeling too big, too exposed. Lila's mind was a battlefield. Guilt for betraying Tom, fear of what this meant, and an aching, undeniable love for Jerry that refused to be silenced. They stopped at a clearing, the trailhead visible in the distance. Lila dropped her pack, her hands shaking as she turned to Jerry. "We need to talk," she said, her voice low. Jerry nodded, her eyes guarded but soft. "I know." Lila took a deep breath, her heart pounding. "What happened last night, it can't happen again. It was a mistake." Jerry's face fell, but she didn't look away. "Was it?" she asked, her voice steady. "Because it didn't feel like a mistake to me." Lila's chest tightened, tears stinging her eyes. "Jerry, I'm married. You're my stepdaughter. It's impossible." Jerry stepped closer, her eyes fierce. "It's not impossible. It's hard, yeah, but it's real. I love you, Lila. Not as my stepmom, but as you. And I think you love me too." The words hit like a tidal wave, washing away the last of Lila's defenses. She did love Jerry, had loved her for years in ways she'd tried to bury. But admitting it meant tearing apart everything she'd built, everything she'd promised. "I do," Lila whispered, her voice breaking. "God help me, I do. But I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be this person." Jerry's eyes softened and she reached out, taking Lila's hand. "You don't have to know right now," she said. "But you don't have to keep pretending either. We can figure this out. Together." Lila looked at their joined hands, the warmth of Jerry's skin grounding her, and for the first time she let herself imagine it. A life where she was honest, where she was free. It wouldn't be easy. There would be pain, judgment, maybe even loss. But there would also be love, real, raw, undeniable love. They finished the hike in silence, but it was a different kind of silence now, one filled with possibility. When they reached the car, Lila paused, her hand on the door. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice barely audible. Jerry smiled, a small, hopeful smile. "We go home," she said. "And we start being honest. With ourselves, with each other. The rest we'll figure it out." Lila nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. She didn't know what the future held. But for the first time, she wasn't afraid of it. She climbed into the car, Jerry beside her, and as they drove back to Asheville, the weight of her secrets felt a little lighter. They didn't have all the answers. There would be hard conversations, broken promises, and a world that might not understand. But they had each other, and in that moment it was enough. The road stretched out before them, winding and uncertain, but Lila knew one thing for sure. She was done running. For Jerry, for herself, she would face whatever came next, and she would do it with her heart wide open.